Okay, Mike's alive. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I will call the Special Board of Aldermen meeting to order on January 22nd at 7 p.m. here in the Aldermanic Chamber. The city clerk will lead us, will say the prayer, and Alderwoman Harriet Gathright will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Gidge.
Here.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Present.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Karen. Here. Alderwoman Kelly. Here. Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi-Gola. Alderman Tenza. Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
We have 13 members present.
Thank you. Alderwoman Malizi-Gola was stuck in traffic coming over the Hudson Bridge. She will be with us shortly. Tonight's Special Board of Aldermen meeting is a presentation, a status update on the Performing Arts Center with Director Cummings from the Office of Economic Development. Would you care to join us, Director Cummings?
Thank you.
An empty seat here, an empty seat there. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Tim Cummings. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the city. I'm here before you this evening to provide a status update relative to the Performing Arts Center project. What's before you is a quick one-page memo, which I will make sure that my corporation counsel has first. So what is before you is a one-page memo which basically outlines some of the major items, tasks, new developments that have occurred since the last time we were together discussing this project, which was on December 20th, 2018, where Neil Cannon and I gave this body an overview of how the new market tax credit program works. What I thought I would do today is just highlight in bullet form some of the major new developments that have occurred along the way. I've also have some attachments which I will go through, not in any particular detail because we do have a regularly scheduled meeting where these presentations are discussed at length, but for this evening's conversation, just want to give you a thumbnail type presentation more than anything else to kind of give you the Reader's Digest version. So with that being said, as I just alluded to a few moments ago, we have regularly scheduled meetings, and I provided this group with the schedule of meetings occurring between now and May. Essentially, it's every Wednesday night at 5 p.m. in room 208 here in City Hall. For about 2 hours, we will be meeting and primarily focusing on designing the Performing Arts Center. Architecture and construction manager contracts were recently approved by the Finance Committee. We awarded Harvey Construction for the construction management, and then Icon in partnership with OTJ as our architectural team for the design. I will note that I didn't add it onto this list because we did this a few months back. And again, I'm trying to just highlight what we've done over the last month, but it should be understood for the record that we do have an operator selected with Spectacle Management, a respondent to to the RFP that was put out late last summer, early fall. So some of the elements I want to highlight this evening, new market tax credit wise, Neil Cannon and I were able to send out what we call the project narrative, which is essentially the application for the new market tax credit to 10 different CDEs. Something this body should be aware of, though, is with the U.S. federal government shutdown, there is a possibility of a delay in the announcement of the new allocation. We don't really know yet what that may be. We know that originally they were talking about a February, March type timeframe for announcements of an allocation for this new round. With the federal shutdown, I could only suspect it will be somewhat delayed. At least that is the feedback we've been given and Neil Cannon relayed to me. So that's something for you to be aware of. The Capital Campaign Committee is meeting regularly with our fundraiser, Betsy McNamara. They've just recently entered into the donor solicitation phase over the last month or so. They've really focused on training, developing strategy, and refining the messaging to make sure that the group was confident and comfortable as they went out to start to solicit donations. And then lastly, I wanted to kind of highlight some of the differing elements that the design team has started with us. So to orientate you for the conversation, I am pulling up preliminary questions that the architect asked of the group, which is the genesis for how we are starting to tackle the designing of the Performing Arts Center. And so guiding principles was highlighted, program assumptions highlighted, events mix was highlighted. Now, all these reference points in this preliminary questions came from another document that I just want to make sure this group is aware of. This is something I wanted to provide you more as backup than anything else to help give you additional context. The Performing Arts Center Steering Committee this summer, last spring, really spent a lot of time developing different strategic goals, what they wanted to see out of the Performing Arts Center. So they developed a mission, operating goals, objectives, how they wanted to see the functioning or the management of the day-to-day operations of the Performing Arts Center, the event mix, the design principles that they really wanted to stick with and see through. And so this document is an important document because it helps provide a frame of reference that the operator, as I mentioned a little while back, Spectacle Management, understands to be the priorities, but then also is what the design team is going to work with as they develop a better program for us. So these preliminary questions get right into some very fundamental questions, such as who controls the parking area directly behind the building. That is a very important question, more for logistics when you have big events coming in and loading and needing to unload. Making sure that that's all really understood and worked out up front is important and will be, again, another way how the Performing Arts Center is successful. So again, I'm not going to go into every single detail here, but I wanted to make sure that this group was aware of the more refined conversation that's taking place on Wednesday nights. And so as you can see, it talks about, the stage, the front of the house, the back of the house, technical support, different type of ticketing, venue administration, and acoustical questions, all very important questions that are evolving answers that we only just started discussing last Wednesday, and we will continue to discuss in detail, particularly over the next few weeks, and then definitely trailing off, but until May. So again, this is just a document I wanted to pull up for you, and it's more for your reference. I provided full copies of this packet this evening for the Board of Aldermen. You can have it, and it's also up on my my webpage, I believe. And then lastly, we met with Icon, OTJ, and their team of sub-consultants, the acquisition, the theater designer, their structural or civil engineer, last Wednesday for the first time. This was a presentation that they presented to us that actually corresponds or goes along with the preliminary questions as asked. And so they basically asked us to start looking at the preliminary questions in advance, and that was the context that framed the beginning points of our conversation, looking at starting points, setting expectations, understanding the programming, starting to have a discussion about the marquee and what the exterior's thoughts are for the building, and then lastly, process and schedule overview. So one thing I want to make sure I highlight this evening is the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee made a decision, I would say the end of last year, early December, to pursue Icon and OTJ as the designers because they were very impressed with the concept plan and the work that they did during the RFP process. I should say the RFQ process. And what they presented to the group and is the direction that folks want to go in was very unique and novel, and I believe hit the right note in every way with all the priorities of the steering committee. And what do I mean by that? So this is a somewhat different concept than what was discussed during the feasibility study. During the feasibility study, there was some ideas about having the theater on the second floor. That has now been waylaid, and it's definitely going to be designed with the idea of having it on the first floor for logistical reasons more than anything else. This concept that is currently being discussed also allows for back of the house and stage productions at a much easier ability or operation than the feasibility study. So you have a proscenium now being contemplated, which is very important for stage productions. And you have the site basically, instead of being a black box, you have a stage that is in the rear of the site. So this light blue would be the 201 Main Street or the Alex Shoe building. This lighter gray box right here would represent that early 1920s structure that basically attaches seamlessly to 201 Main Street. The idea would be is to look at this whole interior here and using the space, putting the stage actually in the older of the two buildings, still having enough seats to accomplish that 500 to 750 seat type of operation, and they're suggesting 750 seats with this design. You then have the front of the house here with concessions, ticketing, coat room, restrooms, and whatnot, all laid out right here. And this is, again, all within the footprint of the what we call the 201 Main Street building. So it was something that was warmly received by the steering committee because it helped deliver on all the goals that actually was outlined by the steering committee in lead up to this RFQ process. This I should also make sure is clearly understood that this design stays within the construction budget as originally articulated. So with that being said, there's still additional space to program, and it's basically the preliminary, around the perimeter. Thank you, of the envelope. So still thought possibly of having some sort of food tapas lounge right here. Still thought of having some sort of boutique retail on Pearl Street here. Mechanical loading would all still come in from here, back of the house, 750 seats. This would be essentially the front entrance, this area right here, basically the corner of Pearl and Main Street. Again, another slight change than what was discussed. There was discussion of maybe having the entrance come from Pearl Street. Feedback we've heard from a lot, and particularly the operator. Main Street should be something that should be considered for the design. So essentially, what you're looking at, if you were to look at this at a bird's eye view, it's really this area in here that's the light blue that we would be looking to really redevelop. And then put in, this is basically, if you were to look at this as like a cake, you'd be looking at the layers. So this is a project that they did, OTJ that is, in Toronto, where they would be applying the same principles and theory here with confidence. So what it is instead of, you have here is a flat floor, which is that red line. You'd have about 500 seats on the first floor. You'd have basically a balcony of 250 seats, and you'd be raising the roof to the same height as the older structure that I was saying is in the rear. This line right here would be the stage. And so this is just, again, a side view of what you'd be looking at. It should also be noted that all this is flexible, and you'd be able to still have this open space on the first floor if you'd wished to have that multi-purpose function room type of design. That, again, is very important to not just the steering committee, but to the operator and to the theater designers themselves. They all recognize the importance of this. So that is, just a very high-level overview of some of the concepts being investigated right now. All this is very preliminary, still needs to be investigated, and due diligence done as you move more towards the construction document phase. So again, this is just what you'd be seeing if it was raised, if the roof was raised. This talks about the different goals that you're trying to achieve. Retain the exterior shell. Seating count and configuration is important. Stage configuration and flexibility. Providing the technical program. Expand the basement. Lobby service area and possibly a VIP experience. The balcony level and patron services. Optimized number of positions and placements of lighting positions. And making sure that there is ample offstage loading for logistics. So then there was a discussion about understanding what is the feel of the Performing Arts Center? What is the experience going to be like? If you have something that's used with material as more wood, as to something that's a little bit more industrial or raw, you achieve different type of feelings. And what is the brand, and what are you really trying to achieve in this space from a consumer experience? And that's an ongoing conversation right now. We understand that it's limited by budget. This will be designed to a budget. But what themes or what materials or elements are used and how they're used and placed is a conversation that's occurring over the next few weeks. Again, another example of how you can have these theaters and performing arts center spaces and have them be very, very different. Again, another view of some of these performing arts centers. This is a more traditional as to something that's a little bit more contemporary or modern. So when you're talking about programming, you're talking about the event mix, types, community organizations, the audience chamber and the stage, back of house, front of house, and other spaces. We want to make sure that we have understanding relative to what the exterior is going to be like in the marquee. And this is a conversation that's just, again, started, but one that we will be exploring further as the weeks come, and really trying to understand what is the marquee that we're trying to achieve for downtown, for Nashua, and for southern New Hampshire, which is all going to go towards the success of this venue. This is just a showing of what Main Street, Nashua looked like at one time. Similar, again, this is all on Main Street here in Nashua at one time. And here's something a little bit more of what was presented as differing type of marquees to be discussed. You have that more traditional. You have something a little bit more dynamic. You have different types of designs. It all goes to the brand and the feel and the look of what you're trying to achieve, which the group is, again, beginning to discuss now. Here's some other more recent designs of marquees and facades, and how they use the facades and the marquee all to work together. Here it is again, another example. Again, something should be noted is you should think about the difference between daytime, which is this one, and nighttime, which is this one, which is an important element to keep in the back of your mind as you're starting your design process. So that's pretty much the highlight. This is a schedule of where we are. We're just starting existing conditions and measuring, schematic design development phase in 12 weeks from now. Starting with the construction document phase in approximately 16 weeks. Ideally, we will start, if we're successful in raising that $4 million with non-city money, construction would start with some sort of early release packages or demolition and abatement sometime in the late summer, more likely early fall type of time period, and then you'd really have a start construction as much as you could in that late fall, winter time, and you'd end construction somewhere around beginning of 2021. That is the schedule and process that the architect went over the other evening. So that's just a very high level overview of what we've been doing with the Performing Arts Center Steering Committee over the last few weeks. We will be meeting again on January 30th, and I will be before you again, I believe, on February 26th to provide you with another update. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. We have 5 minutes for questions. Alderman Lopez.
So it was referred to as a theater in the presentation. Is it still going to be flexible for conference use or that kind of stuff during the week?
Yes. Well, I want to, your last comment, I want to make sure is clear. Not just during the week, on the weekends as well. So it is still going to be a multi-purpose, multi-functioning type space.
Okay.
Alderman Jettie and then Alderman Tenza.
So if any members of the board or who are not on the steering committee or anyone from the public would like to look at the documents that you presented, where can we find those?
So if I may, Madam Chair.
Director Cummings.
The easy answer is I provided everyone with all the I provided Sue Lovering this evening with all the attachments, and they will be part of your minutes this evening. You could easily go there for everything for convenience that may make the most sense.
So if I could follow,
Alderman Jettie.
so the public, that's all available to the public? They would go to the minutes of this meeting? Okay, thank you.
Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. You mentioned before in the design that the stage is going to be on the first floor and maybe towards the back of the building. Is that going to affect those apartments that are back there now and the city's ability to rent any of them?
Director Cummings.
Yes, that's a great question, and so at least a few, if we going with this current design, at least a few, most likely all the apartments would have to be removed. When that would occur. We're still, trying to understand that. We don't want to displace anyone when, again, this project is still coming together and we still need to achieve that $4 million. We're very sensitive, to the tenants that have been living there. Some of those tenants have been living there for quite a while. There's an open dialogue between them. I speak with them regularly. We will provide them as much notice as possible, and so that they can make alternative plans when the time comes. But to be clear, under this current iteration, to be safe, I would say all the residents would need to be moved.
Alderman Dowd.
I believe we allocated $1 million to start the design. How much of that is allocated to the architect and the construction manager? And do we feel that everything you're explaining here can be done short of the actual construction itself for that $1 million?
Director Cummings?
So, to be clear, the contract was approved for just, I want to say 1.3 million at the Finance Committee. I believe that will take care of all the design-related items, including all the subs. We're still working through that process right now with the architect. The architect and the construction manager, in fairness to them, understood the aggressive timeline that the city was under. They were very confident that we could run parallel paths, so they're working with us to develop that finalized scope of work with the contract, as well as starting to design the project. This is something that ICON and OTJ are very comfortable with. They do this routinely with municipalities. ICON is known in New England and particularly in Massachusetts as being an architecture firm that works with a lot of municipalities. They understand we have a certain type of process that is not in the private sector, so they develop this hybrid approach. And so that's what we're working through right now, and we do believe that there's enough money appropriated, so we should be fine in that regard.
Alderman Dowd.
You're saying that finance authorized the two contracts to the amount of 1.3 million?
If I may,
Director Cummings.
the construction manager was 400,000, and the architectural design was 1.3.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 7:28, and we will start our regular meeting in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.